And we're live. Okay, everybody, welcome to the live chat. Rodolfo, punctual as always. What's up, man? How you doing, brother? Hope you had a good day today. So this is just a continuation of the other day. I didn't quite have as much prepared video-wise as I wanted to. And Rodolfo, let me know in the chat comments if my audio is okay, if I'm not breaking up or anything. I was having a little trouble getting my mic to act right, so I don't want to hit you with the robot distorted voice. So let me know how the audio is. But I'm gonna jump into it. Unless I hear otherwise, I'll assume we're doing all right. So we're in Sam Langford's 1911. He's already been on an incredible run. Last time we talked, we were talking about the Bill Lang fight. We looked at a couple clips of the footage. So what I've done now is take the whole thing. Oh, thanks, Rodolfo. Okay, great. The audio's good. So what I've done is taken the rounds that are available to us. I believe it's just 3 rounds, but I don't know if it's chopped. Parts of the 6 rounds chopped down into 3 rounds. I don't know if we actually have. I know that round 1 and 3, we definitely have the beginning of those rounds because you can see them holding up the card. But anyway, what I've done is put it in. Oh, EJ, what's up, brother? Thanks, man. Good to see you, sir. So what I want to do is I want to play the footage of his fight with Bill Lang, the footage we do have, watch him smacking this dude all over the ring, and then maybe read a couple of excerpts from Clay Moyle's book on Sam Langford, and then also play the fight back in slow motion. And so we can see a little bit of what's going on. You know, I believe this is from a hand-cranked camera, so it's a little bit uneven. I'm playing it at 75% speed of what the videos on YouTube are, and that's approximately it, give or take 3 or 4%. But if it's hand cranked, some things are just going to be suddenly quicker. We're just going to have to deal with that. We do what we can, you know. That's all we're doing when we're trying to figure out what's going on. You just work with what you got, just like, you know, Greb Walker, which was filmed, and apparently, you know, from what I've seen, 20 rounds of Langford versus McVeigh, I believe was their first fight in Australia, was filmed because they were doing showings. Langford would talk over the film. You know, he would sort of turn it into a dissertation of sorts. And to not have that today, but to have had it at one point and for it to be gone is painful. Bruce, what's up, brother? Welcome to the chat. We're watching all the footage from the Lang fight today, Bruce. That's all you've missed. Nothing. Virtually nothing. So let's see. Last time we did it, I talked a little bit about the lead into the fight. I don't know if I need to, but I guess I'll recap it very, very quickly. So at this point, Langford's 2 principal trainers and that I'm aware of is Sam's on the left there. That's Georgie Byers in the middle and Bob Armstrong on the right-hand side. And they were both colored champions. Byers was actually middleweight and heavyweight colored champ. Bob Armstrong was the heavyweight champ. So they're helping the guy out. Sam Langford for this fight is billed as the light heavyweight champion of the world. He's not. Bill Lang was billed as the Australian champion, which is something he did win. But they went ahead and gave Langford the light heavyweight. Now, interestingly, later that year, Langford would fight Jack O'Brien, who I believe was a lineal light heavyweight champ, who had won it but never defended it. I could be mistaken about the details, but I believe that, you know, it just wasn't a big deal at the time. But I don't think Jack made any, and he had lost since he had won that title, but he never made an attempt to defend it. But it's interesting that before they even fought, Langford was getting that billing. I guess it was kind of up for grabs. But you know, this year Langford, I'm gonna pull this back up, and I'm trying not to get too manic here, fellas. Let me know if I'm getting too spazzy. But he had started off his year. He's already fought the great Joe Jeanette. He went 12 rounds with Joe Jeanette earlier in the year. Let's pull up a picture of Jeanette. There he is on the left. One of the most finely conditioned athletes in the history of combat sports. Jeanette he could be put down, but he was practically in his prime, practically impossible to keep down, regardless of how much punishment he took. A really incredible pocket-sized heavyweight, but stamina can kill guys. Big guys, those same lungs, if the big guys who aren't naturally necessarily as huge as they look, who have done a lot of weightlifting to build muscle, well, their same lungs, you can't weightlift lungs. Those same lungs have to feed the oxygen to that muscle. That's why the big guys gas. They're dangerous, but then they have to. Oh, thanks, Rodolfo. Yeah, Jack O'Brien won it in 1905. He won it that far back. So it's kind of just up in the air. Well, so they built Langford. So if it was a little bit up in the air, like no one cared about it enough, then I guess it doesn't really hurt anything to make that claim. It's whatever. I mean, it's all long done at this point, long gone. So anyway, so Langford's already fought Jeanette, and after this fight, he's going to go. He's in London now, so he fought Jeanette in America, and then he beat up I think his Atwater as his last fight. Jumps a ship, and he goes to England, and he's going to fight Bill Lang. And the fight after that, he's actually going to go in with. He's already fought one Hall of Famer in Joe Jeanette. Well, he's going to have his first fight of the year with the great Sam McVeigh, the Oxnard Cyclone, the idol of Paris. McVeigh was very, very popular in France and, ranged between 200, 220 pounds in his career. He was a proper heavyweight. Langford came up the weights and didn't actually hit heavyweight until he was pudgy. McVeigh was chiseled from stone. You can think of him like Mike Tyson type build, where I think he's roughly the same height, maybe 5'10", 5'11". But anyway, so that's the next fight coming up here. He's already got these, sometimes fights at this time came together very quickly. And sometimes they were already scheduled out. They already have it planned out. So unless something goes wrong, they know what their schedule is going to be. I'm just going to check the comments and I'm going to run this footage. I'm not going to make you guys wait this time. Haplo Type 0, welcome to the chat. Great to have you here. It's great to see all you guys. I'm just getting into being able to do these by myself. So if you guys have any pointers or tips or requests, you shoot them my way, in the comments there. No problem. I'll address everything. I'm trying to respond quickly to comments too, so you guys get that real-time feel. But once I start this video, if I click off it, it's going to start from the beginning. So I cut the footage into half. So I've got like a 5-minute segment, and I've got a 6-minute segment of that constitutes the footage, and then in slow motion, and then I've just got the one. I think it's 7 minutes at full speed, something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. Let me see. Are there any other photos that we need to look at? I brought this up on part 1, but I just want to show this again because I love this. So I did a little exhibition, and that's Harry Tracy on the right-hand side. And he knocked Langford out with the ref, called it a draw. Just more unfairness. But anyway, this as much as anything on Langford, this really shows how lighthearted he could be, even though he was so feared and physically sort of intimidating. Even though he was short, he was a tank. So looking down on a guy who's just got shoulders that go forever and these giant arms that go down past his knees, he was very intimidating, even though he was short. But he's able to just clown around in his training camps. They did open training camp or open training sessions in the lead up to this fight. Hugh McIntosh, the Australian promoter, he made it a big fight. And so, Langford liked to entertain the public. He wasn't just a guy with a chip on his shoulder trying to beat people up. So I think that's enough of the photos because we went into that before. I think what we need to do is go right into the fight. You guys have any comments? I guess I'll get to them at the end of this. It's only about 7 minutes. So here we go. Round 1. I don't have the clip loaded where they come into the ring and are introduced. I apologize for that. I'll put that in a future talk. Okay, so here we go, guys. All right, so coming out to round 1. Langford's not stepping square yet. He's coming in. You can, do a little of this and that. Now you're going to see Langford when they're touching each other. You can see Langford holding his right hand up as they go through the fight, just to show that he's not hitting in the clinch. Throws a little left hook there. He's just getting a feel for things. A little bit exchange. Looks like a little head action there. A little grind in the head, possibly. See, he's got his hand up. He's showing the crowd clearly that he's not going to be fighting dirty. Now, what Lang's doing there, that's like a Jack O'Brien thing, you know. Lots of guys do it, but Jack O'Brien notably was really good at it. Okay, so they bang, but it's a mistake even with the 30 pounds advantage. Lang does not want to just stand there and trade with Langford because he has an invincible chin at this point, practically, and he hits harder, and he's low down. He's set low, so he's actually hard to get to. But Lang's trying to make it, you know, mix it up, make it a rough and tumble fight, use his size. It's not working. Oh, Langford just missed that big left there. A lot of this will be easier to talk about. He went for like a tie plume, but a lot of this will be easier to talk about in the slow motion. Just want to run it through one time. And while we're chatting afterwards, I can just run it at times. So clinching up. Unfortunately, the footage is rough quality. Now it looks like there was a cut there. You see, they shifted in the ring. Oh, Langford's throwing long punches. Lang's coming in trying to survive. See, they're doing a little clinching. It looks like he's actually holding him there on the blind side of the ref, but they're supposed to break clean. There you go. Nice clean break. Now Langford's using his right hand. Oh, there, he held his right up, using that to stuff punches that are coming his way, but he can still throw that left from where he is with it up. He's able to, you'll see after a while, he's still standing. I'm not sure what the term is, a bladed stance, but he's not, now he's starting to step square. You see how he's cutting off the ring? He's not shuffling forward. You see Joe Louis do that with looking to catch with his rear hand and then throw those lefts off the catch. But you see Langford's doing something slightly different because he's willing to stand square to him and do that same kind of move, whereas Joe Louis would have his head off to the side, you know, off to the side. He's like presenting a lower target. Langford is already a lower target, so he didn't necessarily have to do that. I think that might partly account for the differences in styles. Is Louis is of normal height with normal arms. Langford is very short with normal arms. So the dynamics, so that's the end of the first segment. But like I said, it looked like some of that was cut out in the middle there. I don't know if that's because of a lull in the action or they had limited film, or if that was just the editing so that it would be a manageable length. Or maybe the owner of the full thing just put a little bit online, wanted to keep the rest to himself. It's hard to say. They got the towels going there. I should have cut, if I had a little more time in between work, I would have cut that out, but that's cool to see him, you know. That's right, waft them off, cool these guys off. All right, here they come out for what we assume is round two. Now you see Langford's closing the gap a lot faster now. He's turning it up. He's taking those little stutter steps. See, feints, jabs with the left, like kind of a stiff left. And Lang's pretty nimble for a big guy, for a 200-pounder. He's reasonably nimble, but he's having trouble because he can't clinch under these rules. See, he's got his glove trap there. He's got Langford's left trap, but Langford's holding the right up like he's fighting clean. And see, now Langford, this is the actual sequence we used in the other talk. And you see Lang's trying to stand his ground. Pushes him with both hands. Langford's speeding it up now. And now he's cutting the ring off almost comically at this point. Oh, look at that. Left hook, threw a nice right straight to the body. See, now the fight's really heating up. Oh, hits him with a right. Now they're banging. Now this is the worst thing. Even if you're bigger than Sam Langford, no one did this. Sam McVeigh, Harry Wills, nobody wanted to really stand and trade with Langford. That wasn't how you fought someone like him with his combination of, especially at this point, his agility, his chin, and also his punching power. There you go. Hit him with a long right and a long left. And Lang is going to shake his head in a minute like, oh my God, what am I doing here? He's going to take the full 9 count. And under the British rules, you know, Langford has to let him, you know, they got to go stand on the other side of the ring. Whereas I think in the US, you know, most of the jurisdictions, if you knock a guy down, you can stand right over him at this point in time. This is in 1911. Later on, it's different. I'm not sure when the British rules changed. See there, Langford's able to, oh, nice vicious left hook right there. Langford's able to bat punches away or catch and counter. You know, so his right hand, his right straight is a powerful punch. But you see, he's actually standing kind of square and he's got his right in front of him. But because of his long arms, he can still, with a twist of the hips, he can get that left out way further when the time comes. And Langford, you know, he's not just short and hard to hit. Oh, that, you know, that hurt. See, now Lang's, he's throwing to the body, but he's in the fire there. He's struggling to keep up when they just stand and trade. And this was an advantage Langford had over other fighters, and this carried on past his prime. Was that he can bang it out. Like, talk about a boxer puncher. He's an absolute master boxer. But if someone wanted to just start throwing rights and lefts at each other, he could come out on top in that manner. And so later on in his career, when he's blind, he still has that finishing power. That makes a difference, you know. You make a mistake against a guy with technique, yeah, he can make you pay. If you make a mistake against a guy with one punch death power, that might be your night. And that happened to people against Langford, even when he was past it. Look at that catch and counter. That's just butter. Yeah, and see, what Lang has found out is that Langford his center of gravity is so low and he's so physically strong on top of that he can't hurt him. And Langford is showing no respect for his space. So, you know, a big guy like that he's fighting a short guy. Oh, look at those low feints, making him think he's going to jab to the body, comes with a big right hand over the top. So it looks as though that is what I have, at least on the video that I saw. I might be confused, and there might be more footage than that online. I will be searching for that. I'm still back earlier in Langford's career, so this is leaping ahead for me. But I just got the urge. I was like, I need to do some live stuff. Let me check the comments now before we maybe break out some slow motion. Oh, Andre, what's up, sir? Look at this. What a collection of characters we got here. The Towel Boys. Yeah, Rodolfo. Seriously, that's cool with the towels, right? Yeah, he was going at it. Yeah, Andre, Lang said that he had snuck in to see Langford sparring, and Langford had knocked out a succession of sparring partners so quick. With the speed of his punches was such that Lang couldn't even figure out which hand he used to knock him down. So it's you know, it's really a special combination of attributes that Langford had that allowed him to fight the way he did. You take one of those away, like you give him little guy arms, or if you take his chin away, or if he didn't have the same dexterity or the drive and toughness that he seems to have carried with him his whole career, you take one of those away, he's much more mortal. But Langford was the total package. And that's how he was described by his contemporaries, as he could do everything. He didn't, other than being short, he didn't have a weakness, you know, and he didn't actually have a short reach. Like I said in part one, he's at his full adult height by now. He's 5'7.5", but he has a 6'2" wingspan. So, you know, 74 inches isn't like a gigantic reach. Like Harry Wills was 80 or more inch reach. So that's like the next level. But relative to how high he is, Langford's arms are very long, and that throws guys off. You can't really prepare one for someone who's arguably the best at this time. So one, you can't go find the best other until you get in the ring and fight him. But also, can't really prepare for his build and his combination of that gigantic chest, powerful arms, strong core, you know, thick thighs. But he's super stocky, so he just the coming in and trying to put some moves on this guy. Not sure what you're going to get. You're certainly not going to get that same look from having sparring partners, because unless Langford is your sparring partner, I don't think he'd agree to that. before you actually fight him. But I want to play a little bit of this in slow motion. I want to keep it a little more focused than I did last time. Appreciate you guys being here. Now, is that banner, is that getting in the way at all? I don't think it is, but let me take this off of here. I'll check this last comment. Yeah, Ross Clot, 74 is a lot considering, 5'7.5". Hagler 75, Quarry was 78, and they're all short. Yeah, so it's almost like the anomaly with Langford, other than the height, was his chest. He was just so barrel chested. And I saw someone post on one of the boxing forums, and it was like, I think Sonny Liston was the heavyweight champ who had a comparable sized chest to Langford, but even like Joe Louis, a couple inches less than Langford's. And some of these big punchers, only Primo Carnera was like the super outlier, over 50-inch chest, 56, I think it was. But Max Baer also had a really big chest. But a lot of these heavyweight champs, even like Joe Louis, who was famously hard puncher, he didn't have as big a chest. So Langford was a real power puncher physically, not just putting everything into the punches. He was constructed just perfectly to be a power hitter, but he also had all the experience against the lower weights. The power, to add to that power. He was a master boxer, but he was also very physically gifted. And I threw up a graphic in the last talk, of just some of the opponents that he had fought. And I'll go through it just very quickly from his career. So in his first few years, the top left there, that's Patsy Sweeney. He was very experienced. He was a few years past his peak, but he was sort of a battler. So he was like sort of bring the chaos and come to fight the whole time. No subtlety, just to fight. Langford got a late stoppage over him. Then he fought 15 rounds against the great Joe Gans. That's second from the left on the top row. Then he fought multiple times against Jack Blackburn, third from the left on the top row, who was a real hard man, but a brilliant boxer, very technical. And then he also had multiple fights against Dave Holly, who was very tricky indeed, and very experienced very quickly. So when he was still young in age, he had generated an enormous amount of experience, much like Langford had. They had several battles. Then there's Elbows McFadden, who was past his prime, and he just destroyed him brutally. Then top right there, that's the great Barbados Joe Walcott, who inspired a later person, a future great heavyweight, to become Jersey Joe Walcott. Apparently that was the original Joe Walcott was Jersey Joe's dad's favorite boxer. That's what I had read, at least. But he fought 15 rounds against Walcott. Now, Walcott was a crouching fighter, and he was only 5'1.5", and was able to and did fight heavyweights. And he was sparring heavyweights all the time. He was so feared. His ability to get inside and especially punish the body with his powerful build. So Langford had fought 15 rounds against one of the greatest crouching fighters. And so that experience, especially years later in 1924, Langford said he never hit anyone more or got hit more times than against Barbados Walcott. And that happened in 1904. So he was only a couple years into his groove. This fight with Lang was in 1911, so he's had a bunch of experience since. But that Walcott fight was very important to him, and Walcott is an all-time great. You put him against the other welterweights, he brings a very particular skill set and set of attributes to a fight. So then in this middle row here, that's the Professor Andy Watson. Langford fought a bunch of rounds against this guy, had a ton of fights, mostly prearranged draws. If no one's knocked out, the money split goes down the middle, and it's a draw. There's no win or lose. Most of Andy Watson's fights were prearranged draws. I mean, he had more than a dozen more draws than wins and losses combined. I mean, he had like 40-something draws when Langford was fighting him already. And I don't think he even had 25 wins or losses combined that time. So then second from the left, that's young Peter Jackson, Sim Tompkins, fantastic puncher, two-handed puncher. and Langford fought him a bunch of times. So just that first section, not even halfway through all these pictures, all these different styles and looks. So someone like Lang, who had fought at a high level, sort of, and he competed with Tommy Burns for the Commonwealth title after he'd already lost to Burns for the world title when Burns was the champ. He fought Jack Johnson, I think, for his 10th or 11th fight. Lang and fought Jack Johnson and lost. But Langford has seen all these really powerful guys. Like, okay, third from the left in the middle, Joe Jeanette, who we mentioned before. I mean, Bill Lang was no Joe Jeanette. And then right dead center there, the great Jack Johnson, Little Arthur. One of the top pound for pound fighters among the big men ever. I mean, he was so clever and strong, and he could bang it out, although he preferred to kind of school guys. He was very technical in shutting people down, as well as, tough and a big, incredibly strong guy. He was quite a puzzle, and Langford fought him with a big size disadvantage. But that experience, carried through. They had fought in 06. Jim Barry there, next to Jack Johnson. Then Big Sandy Ferguson, who had a lot of size. He was kind of carried a little bit of a muffin top. Langford had some fights with him. Then there's Tony Ross. Now, bottom row in the bottom left, that's Fireman Jim Flynn. And Langford actually had 3 fights between 08 and 1910. He had 3 fights with Flynn. There he is on the right, Jim Flynn, Fireman Jim Flynn, who had been a world title challenger, if I'm not mistaken. And Langford beat him down very quickly in the first fight, and Flynn edged it, I believe, in a newspaper decision the second fight. And in the third fight, it went longer. Flynn was a little bit larger than Langford, a little bit heavier, I should say, and a little bit taller. In the third fight, Langford stopped him at 8. And I believe it was the third fight where Langford broke his jaw. Hit him with a right left, I believe it was. Left him writhing on the floor. So hard night for Jim Flynn. But Jim Flynn, listening to interviews with him, he was racist. He described people in racist terms, but he fought across racial lines. I don't know if that's better or worse, but he didn't, at least at times in his career. I haven't studied Jim Flynn's entire career, but at times he definitely wasn't drawing a color line because he fought some great black boxers. So credit to Jim Flynn, although I guess he was kind of racist. I mean, these were racially charged times, but I don't want to give him too much praise, but he did at least fight. And he had 3 fights in this time with Langford, and I think later on, when they were old, they fought some more. But Flynn was a tough guy. He doesn't really get talked about, but he was competing at a very high level and had a lot of experience. Now let me pull that other graphic back up. So then next to Flynn is one of the white hopes, Al Kubiak, the Michigan Giant. And Kubiak was, I guess he was about 210, 220. I don't think he was particularly tall, but he was thick. He looks like a potato, really, doesn't he? But Langford, that was him and Jim Barry were guys that Langford would give a lot of losses to. Certain guys, they only fought a few times. Some guys got a lot of losses from Langford. And then other guys like Hawley and Peter Jackson and Jack Blackburn, there's some draws involved as well. It didn't always go one way or the other. And it's worth noting in this time, certain refs, they weren't necessarily going round by round. If as was often the case, the ref was scoring the fight. So like when Langford fought Barbados Walcott in 04, the ref said that Walcott's strong showing in the last few rounds, in his opinion, made the fight even though round by round, Langford had won. Everyone knew that he had won more rounds, but that was just how it goes. People, just like today, whoever is doing the judging, there are differences of opinion that are actionable. People can actually go out and express those opinions in how they officiate. So some things have changed over time, but a lot of things, they're more or less the same. Some of the problems in prize fighting haven't really changed in the last 120 years or whatever, 110 years. So third from the left on the bottom, that's Iron Haig. Now you can't really see because it's small, but he has a crazy haircut. He has like a little patch on the front of his dome, and then he shaved the rest of it. I don't know what was going on. Maybe that was after he fought Langford in 09 and he got the sense knocked out of him and he thought that was a good haircut. But anyway, Langford fought him for the English heavyweight title in got him out of there. Although I believe in the fourth round, Haig was able to knock Langford down, hit him with a mighty punch. But Langford then took over and got him out of there. And then bottom center, Dixie Kid. And then to the right of him is Mike Schreck, who was a middleweight, but who also fought at what we would call now light heavy and then at heavyweight. And Langford, he was supposed to be a test for Langford. And this was around the time when Langford was trying to fight a lot of the top middleweights. And Schreck was one guy who stepped up. And I think they fought in Pittsburgh, but Langford blew him away like it was the easiest thing in the world. I can't remember. I think it was the first round. It was either the first or the second. But that couldn't have helped in Langford's efforts to secure fights with the other top middleweights, because if they were already nervous about him, or the light heavyweight size fighters, if they were already nervous about him, fighting someone maybe only a little bit larger than himself, like Schreck, and destroying him was going to give them pause. Now, to the right of Schreck, third from the right there on the bottom row, that's the great Stanley Catchell, who did fight Langford, but he wouldn't fight him in a long fight. He fought him over 6 rounds in a no decision state. So as long as he didn't get knocked out, he would stay champ. You know, it wouldn't. There's no decision in certain jurisdictions allowed if the fight goes a distance. And that's where you get newspaper decisions. People still want to know who won. People still want to bet. And so the newspaper men in attendance would score the fight, and then we take that as like a panel of judges for no decision fights. And if you go to, say, BoxRec and you look at the top of the page, you'll see that it'll show their record of official decisions. But if you scroll down to the beginning of the actual fight listing, at the top of that listing, it'll tell you how many bouts they actually had. And sometimes it's very pronounced. Like Jack O'Brien, it might say, oh, he had like 105 fights. We actually had 92 fights. So even if they weren't decisions rendered because of the jurisdictions, how they were running things in certain jurisdictions, they still fought. You know, if you fight 20 rounds against Sam McVeigh or Joe Jeanette in a no decision and it goes a distance, you can't have an official decision, does not mean you didn't just have a real fight. You know, imagine, say, Vegas was a no decision state today, and all the fights in Vegas, if there wasn't a knockout or a TKO or a DQ, then there's no decision. What would people's records look like if you ignored those fights? Because a lot of stuff goes to decision. So in this time, you know, boxing was under threat. Powerful people were supporting it, but powerful people were trying to stamp it out. And that's just how it was. We're past that now, thankfully. So the last two on this, as far as just talking about experience, Langford has the giant bruiser battling Jim Johnson there, second from the right on the bottom row. So however tough Lang was, or big, he was still, you know, he had 30 pounds on Langford, but battling Jim had 30 to 40 pounds on Bill Lang. So if Langford could fight him, and battling Jim wasn't able to get a win over Langford in all their fights, then being bigger than him is not going to mean a lot. Bill Lang might have been more technical than battling Jim, but he was a much smaller person. So Langford could take it. Bottom line, Langford could take it, but he also fought really smooth guys, like in the bottom right there, the Joplin Ghost, Jeff Clark, hugely underrated, jabber mover, but also a versatile fighter, very quality fighter, and hugely experienced, fought a crazy schedule. And, you know, and as far as guys who've been at a Hall of Fame level, he's among the most rounds. He's among the guys, the handful with the most rounds in the ring against Hall of Famers in history. So he's one of those as far as what he'd seen in the ring. And Langford fought him a bunch of times. So, but at this point they'd fought, but they hadn't had their whole series yet. And so Langford had seen all these different looks, all these different combinations of speed and power, trickiness, or just hard-headedness. So Bill Lang coming in, and, you know, for Lang, this very well would have been gotten him a title shot against Jack Johnson, who was 2 years and change into his title run, but it was not to be. There's a great photo of Langford chilling with the ref. I'm trying to remember from the book. I think that's Eugene Corey, I think was the ref's name. But they're sitting there just watching Lang roll around on the ground trying to collect himself. So I'm going to, and just to be clear with Lang, I'm going to use the Boxing Librarian's excellent heavyweight ratings because that's the only place you can get them, right? So So you can see here in 1908, which was the end of the year, was when Jack Johnson beat Tommy Burns in Australia, beat him down to win the world title, and basically ended up vacating his colored heavyweight title. But you can see Langford's the top contender. You can see Bill Lang's over down there, the number 4 contender. And the year after, he's also the number 4 contender. Now, I don't think he was in the rankings at the end of 19. These are year-end rankings, by the way. The end of 1910, because he hadn't been undefeated. So he was a year away from being ranked, but he would have been a top 5 or over a year. But with the year-end rankings, I mean, they fought in February in London, so Lang was a bit over a year out of the rankings as far as the year-end rankings, and so he was a top guy. He was a threat, but he wasn't like a perpetual top guy like Langford, Jeanette, and McVeigh and Johnson, who were always up near the top almost every year, or at least a considerable numbers of years. There are guys like Kubiak, Mike Williams. If you look in the middle one there, 1909, Mike Williams. I don't know if he even comes back in the ratings or if he just pinged the bottom of it. They're much more volatile at the bottom in this time because the dominant heavyweights were fighting a schedule that other guys couldn't keep up with. And I did see that in certain writers where they would comment on how the colored fighters had so much experience, and that the way basically the white guys could compete with that is you find some talented guys and get them that kind of experience while they're still young. And you actually see that happen in the mid to late teens and in the 20s. See a lot of white boxers emulate this, where they get tremendous experience, you know, in that whole golden age of boxing, the roaring 20s and all that. It might have been socioeconomic reasons why they were fighting that schedule, but it did serve the function of some of these great fighters who fought really terrific schedules against each other and a lot at a high level. And you know, the top guys like Langford, Johnson, McVeigh, and Jeanette weren't the best because they were black guys. They were the best because they were the best. They had the experience, hard life, and the right training, and there's a training lineage. And so a lot of combinations made them the best. And if in other eras, different, you know, ethnicities or skin tones, whatever, you know, like different kinds of people become dominant in different weights. It's not a rule like, oh, you're the black guy, you're obviously the best. You know, it's a given. But just to say it out loud, it's in this time though, the top 4 heavyweights in the world for some years were all colored. And so Johnson had the title, but he was fighting, other than battling Jim, who was more of a fringe guy, dangerous and big, but a fringe guy. You know, he got a title shot against Johnson. He's an easier fight for a technical master like Johnson. But the other 3 guys, they're fighting each other a lot and fighting everyone else a lot. They crushed a lot of white hopes who never got to Johnson. They actually crushed some white hopes who did still get a title shot against Johnson. I think Tony Ross is one of them. You know, Langford had beaten him up, but he still got a title shot. Langford didn't, because Johnson was being selective, just like we see today with certain champs where it's so blatant. They're obviously picking their way through just to avoid losing. So in this particular time, it was a rich heavyweight era, and the top 4 guys were all colored boxers. And so with the colored heavyweight championship and the world championship both held by that, you know, you do see in the papers sometimes people will be billed as the white champion, you know. So when only white guys were mostly fighting for the title, the world title, quote unquote, you had colored belts. But there were times like when Barbados Walcott was the welterweight champion, you see guys claiming the white welterweight championship, and same with Gans at lightweight. I don't know if I count that. I don't really collect stats that way, counting champions and championships and contenders, but it is interesting in the papers to see how people are billing themselves and the different claims for titles. You know, titles are worth what the fighters are. I mean, when Harry Greb beat Gene Tunney and gave him his only career loss, that was for the American light heavyweight title, but that's one of the great collisions of that era, of any era. But it wasn't for a world title. So really, it's really about the fighters determine what a title is worth. And Johnson did a lot of work on his way to a world title. So even though He wasn't quite fighting all the top guys, not the very top guys. As world champ, he certainly, in the totality of his career, he definitely fought a lot of killers. Jack Johnson was a great heavyweight in his own right, even though he played some games to get paid and avoid the top guys, the very top guys. But Johnson was brilliant. It doesn't mean he would have lost to them. He was taking a little bit less of a chance. It doesn't mean he'd automatically lose to all three. And he'd actually beaten all three earlier in their careers. So who knows how it would have gone? They would have been great fights. That's the real shame. It's not that they didn't get to beat up Johnson, it's that they didn't get the opportunity to try and beat the great Jack Johnson, who was a brilliant fighter. You know, the big guys, people call the big guys clumsy and they try to disparage heavyweights. But that's just some guys. It's not Jack Johnson. It's not Jeanette, Langford, or McVeigh either. They were very technical as well as tough and driven. Quite a combination. So I'm seeing 26 comments. Let me come and show the love to the comments. I apologize, guys. Oh, we got Hardline in the chat. Big up Hardline. That's what's up. Okay, so man, we got what a collection of great people we have in this chat. This is wonderful. So let's see, Rodolfo. I guess I'm gonna scroll up. I don't want to miss comments. Yesterday I was answering stuff twice. Look at all this love you guys send to each other. See, this is what I'm talking about. We can thank the boxing librarian because all you guys have spent time in his chats and positively only, you know, positivity only. Scrapbook, everything is going great here. I hope I'm not being too verbose, gents. You know, like I tend to ramble and I'm trying not to boom my voice. I'm trying to be like a little bit more chill. Yeah, Rodolfo Flynn definitely got what was coming to him, but he gave, to his credit, he praised Langford after the first fight. Then he was talking smack after he got a little bit the edge in the second fight. But after the third fight, yeah, and later in his career, they retired. Flynn had a lot of good things to say about Langford's ability as a fighter, regardless of how he felt about his skin tone or about people's skin tone in general. So it's an interesting time where you have racist newspapermen who insist on using these derogatory terms, but they still give their proper credit to the fighter. You have a guy like Ling who's throwing around the N-word and being boastful, but after the fact, after the results are in, he's gotten beat up, he shows the appropriate credit. And so I have mixed feelings about this time. You know, it wasn't all bad. It wasn't like no one would be given verbal credit. It's just a lot of times fighters couldn't get opportunities the same way if they weren't a white dude. Bottom line. So Scraps, some shout outs. Let me just see. Yeah, Andre, that Jeanette photo, the one where he's got his arms lower. Yeah, I hadn't seen that before until a couple days ago. I had to put that up for everybody. So Rodolfo asked, do you think Ketchel would have given Langford a rematch if he didn't pass away? I know he's trying to get a rematch for Jack Johnson at the moment, but tragedy struck. You know, I don't know for sure, but in Clay Moyle's book, he references Ketchel saying or being reported to have said that he wasn't going to fight Langford over 25 rounds or 20 rounds. I can't remember which he said, but to paraphrase him, you know, when he was asked point blank. But I don't know if that was directly reported from him or if that was something someone else said, because there are certain controversial things that it's someone saying it about someone else saying it. You know, it's like second or sometimes even third hand. So we have to we just have to take things with a grain of salt, try to find sources and think about the sources. Now, Hardline Boxing Talk, the boxing librarian, bless the chat. Big up, BL. He says, just wanted to pass by and show my support. I'm going to listen to both parts tomorrow, working on my Greb top 5 years. Yes, yes. So for anyone who doesn't know, we're doing a top 5. Myself and BL did a top 5 Sam Langford's toughest seasons. We're now doing with Scrapbook Boxing. The three of us are going to each produce Harry Greb's top 5 toughest seasons, in our opinion. We're going to make that a live chat, and that should be a lot of fun. I know I'm going to have a lot of fun. Con Shonry, I love your name. That makes me smile every time. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks to all you guys to stop by. It means a lot. Yeah, Con Shonry, this if you like no drama, just talking boxing. I mean, we can discuss drama that happened in the past, but it's as a we're observing the historical record of it. I'm not trying to get too personally involved in drama that's been finished a long time ago. I don't even get involved in today's stuff that's still up in the air. So on this channel, I'm just hoping to do a lot of talking about boxing, hopefully find some cool photos and look at footage. And I'm here to learn as well as to talk about the things that I've already started to soak in. So Con Shonry says even Jeffries famously said he couldn't have licked Johnson at his best. Yeah, after he tried to come back, he's a big guy. He's a big, scary dude, but he lost. I think BL was saying he lost like 100 pounds for that. But that doesn't, yeah, but Johnson was brilliant. He wasn't just a big guy because he wasn't the biggest guy for his time, but he was brilliant too in his sense of timing and just the intelligence. And I guess Johnson was a musician, so that broken rhythm, that's part of playing something interesting when you're playing music. So he was able to apply that into screwing people up when they were trying to fight him. Tara, get out of here with your spam self. Time that out. Con Genre, I have a natural aversion to drama, so match made in heaven. Yeah, I've overdosed on people in their drama because that's really just their ego. It's not really even often got anything to do with the subject matter. The subject matter is like an opportunity for people to just seek, supply for their ego. So we don't need any of that here. This is more like a little bit more cerebral, even though fighting is rowdy, and I do like rowdy fights. Like there's a Bellator event this weekend, and one of the students of the great Fedor Emelianenko, just an incredible, my number one pound for pound all time mixed martial arts fighter. His students fighting to unify his interim heavyweight title in Bellator with Ryan Bader's actual heavyweight title. They're going to fight, and I'm really hyped for that. And I have a lot of emotional investment in Fedor and his students and in mixed martial arts. But in boxing, I'm a little drier about it. I'm impressed by everything and I'm fascinated, but it doesn't burn me up. And I feel bad when I see on Twitter, I see the boxing fans going crazy with all the drama that happens because I get sucked in sometimes to the MMA stuff, but I'm a little bit of an outsider with the boxing. So hopefully I'm able to learn something about how MMA keeps messing with my feelings by watching how boxing messes with y'all's feelings. Hardline, it is so great to see you in the chat, man. It's weird to see you in the chat, see your thumbnail in the chat, because I'm usually in yours. The tables have turned. Yo, I sent you that link. Obviously, BL, you're welcome to join. You don't ever have to ask. Where I said I would be leaving the links. You can just go there and just show up. You just come rappelling down the walls and just come on in at will. Same with Scrapbook. Scrapbook, you ever want to come on a chat, you can just, I'll make a shared Google Drive folder and I'll put a text file with the links. And again, you don't have to ask to come on a stream. You just show up in the guest room, in the studio from clicking the link that I'll be sending. Con Shonry, musical people definitely have extra dimensions to draw from. Sugar Ray Robinson was a song and dance guy as well. He had music in him. Yeah, he did a lot of dancing. I'd heard that. I didn't know about playing, but that's cool. Archie Moore. Um, again, and Joe Calzaghe was one of probably my favorite modern era boxer, but his dad was a musician. Yeah, BL, the tables have turned. Although you can jump on this, man, you want to jump on if you want to turn the tables again, you can come on, man. But no pressure, BL. You do so much work. And I see you just put a video up, which I can't wait to watch once I get off of this one. But yeah, music and martial arts. And so Calzaghe's dad, Enzo, was, I think, a bass player, but I remember him talking about like a fight. It's like a song, So you have the jab, you have like the verse, but then the chorus, the big boom, bing boom bam of the chorus. That's rock and roll, and you could see it in Kazagi's fights where he's throwing like a bunch of punches, and it seems a little wild, but he's just going with the volume. That's the chorus of the rock song. That's the big. That's when he hits the hook. Yeah, so I think while you guys talk, it's so great to see you in the chat. But instead of just looking at the chat here, I think I'm going to run a little bit of slow motion of the footage. And let me see which is which. I think this is the first one. Let me see here. Oh, hold on a second. Let's get a tasty looking background here. It's not bad. You know what? I'm going to go a little zen. There we go. A little bit of zen background here. All right, so this must be the beginning of the fight. So they're coming out. You see Langford's always ready to catch or stuff something with that right hand. He's very strong too. So he and like I said, with long arms for his height, he's not like Marciano. I'm trying to remember. I think he was what? Was he 5'10" and a half or 5'11" and a half? But he had the really short arms, right? So Langford is much shorter than Marciano, but his arms are way longer. And so but again, although they're different, they're both just a difficult puzzle. Certain guys, excuse me, certain guys it's really hard to plan for because of the look they present. Might not like it's hard to find a guy like Rocky. Where would you go find a guy like Marciano who hits like that, who's that tall but with the little tiny arms and with his sort of strength and endurance? You just can't find it. And that was what it was like with Langford, McVeigh, Jeanette, and Johnson. They were unique. They were uniquely excellent fighters in a rich era. And they weren't someone you could get ready for directly. You couldn't just go get someone to imitate them very well. I don't think they could even imitate each other that well, even though they were brilliant, because physically they were different. Yeah, see, Langford's just cutting him off, and you see he's so unafraid. And that part of that is because if instead of the Jack O'Brien routine, in the times in this footage that we see, when Bill Lang plants his feet, he caught a big right there. When he plants his feet and tries to bang it out and use his size, Langford is happy to just sit there and each guy wail on each other until one of them goes down, because Langford hits harder than all these guys. So even like Sam McVeigh had a considerable size advantage on Langford and had fantastic stamina and heavy hitter with both hands. But McVeigh fought him on the retreat. He was also very good on the retreat, and he definitely opted to fight Langford on the retreat in multiple fights of theirs, because even though he was much bigger and himself a knockout puncher, you don't just stand there and trade with Langford. Langford was the last guy in the world you want to just sit there and wail with. And he was very fast and agile as well. And also, Langford was big on trying to hit a guy right on the point of the chin to get the maximum effect. And so his placement and his sense of distance was uncanny. I've seen it described as uncanny. So there were certain ways you could approach Langford, but during his prime, when he all his boxes were checked with the most epic ink, there wasn't a lot that could be done. But McVeigh fought him on the retreat, drew and beat him as well as losing to him with stiff jabs and left hooks as Langford tried to close distance. Because you see Langford's just crowding him. Lang's circling. Today you say, oh, why are you circling into the power hand? But it's also, Langford, oh, there goes a left hook. Langford's left hook was vicious. You couldn't really win. You can circle clockwise, anti-clockwise. Langford had something ugly either way. And like we're seeing here, he'll step square to exchange. So it's not even like he's fighting righty, but he's also fighting just standing, just squared up to him. Oh, that was nice. He showed him the right hand. I'm gonna clip that out. The next talk, I'm gonna clip that little move out. It's hard to see, but he's pulsing with his right hand, and he shows him the right, and then hits him with a monster left hook. A little bit of, theatrics, mind games. So I'm not sure if that's the end of the video. I'm gonna go check the comments. I think it's the end of the first half of the slow motion part. Let's see what's going on. Oh, okay, we can leave that on. Let's see. Conscionery. Fighters with musicality have that ability to be conscious about rhythm, whereas many or perhaps most become predictable in their movement. Great point, Con. Absolutely fantastic point. And music's one of my main passions. And yeah, like there's structure and variation on a theme, and fighting variations on a theme where your shot selection, just like a lead guitarist, you don't want to play the same lick every time. That wouldn't be, because it gets boring. But if you put small variations in a thing, now it's actually coherent. That's how you end up musically with something like Beethoven's um, Moonlight Sonata, where that arpeggiation, he draws that out into this masterpiece in the movement that's most popular. That motif, or Beethoven's Fifth, that motif can be turned upside down, backwards, stretched over different chords, but it locks everything in. So you can think of that motif as the fists, and then all the different ways it's used is what you're doing with your fists. And Langford had all the tricks, and he'd fought so many of the guys with all the tricks. And unlike these career heavyweights, he'd fought great lighter fighters who were faster and sometimes more tricky. And so, like Gans and Walcott, these guys. So he had seen more technique than Bill Lang could summon to bring into the fight, I guess is what I'm saying. So even though Lang was tough, he wasn't the toughest guy. He wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the fastest guy. He wasn't the most technical guy. And he wasn't the guy with the most experience, even close to it, that Langford had fought. So even though he's a bigger guy, he's taller, I think he had a little bit of reach on him. And he fought at a decently high level. He was, I believe, Langford was a betting favorite, but, Lang didn't have many avenues to victory, I guess we can say. He was very likely to lose, even though on paper you'd think, well, he has the physical advantages, but he did not actually have the physical advantages in a literal sense. But I'm going to read a tiny little excerpt here from Clay Moyle's book to honor his research and the fact that he must have just done so much work. I'm going to stick that up on the screen. Buy that book. If you ever buy a boxing book, buy that one first. So this is from page 205. This is from the section on the Lang fight. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read, and this is quotes or paraphrases what the ref, Eugene Corey, I guess, thought. So here's just a couple paragraphs. Sam entered the ring, appearing disinterested. He swapped jokes with his seconds and waved to a friend in the audience. This was Sam's method of putting fear into his opponent. The effect on Lang was remarkable. Before he left his corner at the clang of the gong, he appeared to be wondering which of the ring posts the tar baby was going to pick up and hit him with. When Lang got his first look at Sam stripped for battle up close, his nerves heightened. Sam couldn't have been more than 5'6" or 5'7" tall, but with arms that seemed to hang below his knees and a pair of shoulders that were the biggest Bill had ever seen, he looked like a gorilla. Sam presented Bill with an impression of even greater strength than Jack Johnson. Despite Sam's impressive build, to many novices in the crowd, it may have appeared a mismatch in Lang's favor as they stood next to each other receiving instructions from referee Eugene Corey. Sam was some 30 pounds lighter than Lang, who also looked to be a head taller. Corey, however, was of another mind. He'd never seen a finer specimen of a man of Sam's stature, and he couldn't help but be impressed by Sam's physique. There were enough other knowledgeable fight fans, people who knew what Lang was truly up against in Sam, that despite the crowd's obvious preference for him, Lang entered the ring a 3-1 underdog. So that's just a little. That wasn't actually quoting Corey. That's quoting Clay Moyle's book directly. That's Moyle's voice, I believe. So just to give you an indicator, so Lang's got 30 pounds on him. He's taller. He's got maybe a little bit of reach. He's fought at a pretty high level. 3-1 underdog. Even being popular, because there are enough sober minds who are giving it some proper thought when their money is at stake. So that gives you an indicator on how good Langford was, that he could be that much smaller. And Lang wasn't a muffin top. One of these photos where Langford's giving him a nice hard left, you can see Lang's got right there. You see Lang's 203 pounds with a six-pack. He's not a muffin top 200 pounds. He's not like a blown up something else, even though he was lighter early in his career. He fought at lower weights. But at this point, he's a pretty ripped 200 something pounds. And Langford's given up about 30 pounds, but it doesn't matter. It's all about mechanics and core strength and like a lot of things other than just how tall or how heavy someone is. So I'm going to put on the slow motion, the second half of the slow motion. Nope, that's the first one. Here we go. Doing the towel action. I'm going to jump over here and see what we got going on in the comments. Sorry if I'm neglecting you guys. See, Rodolfo says, even Joe Louis used to attend music lessons. I'm not sure about what instrument, but instead he ditched the lessons and chose boxing as a passion. Yeah, I think it might have been violin. I'm trying to remember. It might have been on a scrapbook talk where he was using his violin lessons money to go train fighting, keeping it secret while Conchanery Marciano had something like a 60-inch reach. Yeah, it was really short. I can't remember if it was 67 or something, but it was, for his height, it was significantly the other direction from what Langford had, which was short in height, but then the reach of a much taller guy. Oh yeah, and then Con says it was violin, but he eventually used to the violin lesson. Yeah, I see. Okay, I'm just repeating you, Conchanery. My fault. So Rodolfo says, yeah, I think one of the family members found out and put a whooping on him. Yeah, it's possible. Andre says his left was something else, no doubt. It's fast, unpredictable, strong. That's right, Andre. And sometimes in this fight, you can see he can throw multiple lefts in a row. He can also throw left, rights, various combinations. But he's not against throwing a couple lefts in a row or throwing a couple right hands. At one point, when Lang just goes for it, Langford just sit there and wail on him with his right hand. Yeah, scrapbook, great point. Let me put this up on the screen. Watch the footstep timing of Sam Langford. Yeah, the placement of his feet relative to where Lang is standing and where Lang is moving. Langford was very, very intelligent. Part of that is he had fought a who's who across all the weights. So a lot of these, like someone like Mavet was always a heavyweight, to my understanding. So he didn't get to fight these like lightweights and welterweights who are super fast and technical, where you have to get that reaction time. Langford had fought a lot of guys like this, very technical, smaller fighters, but then he put on enough weight and had a giant enough pair on him to go up and fight at the higher weights with the experience from the lower weights. So even though he was a smaller guy, he had some advantages in everything he'd seen, all the looks he'd seen in the ring. Yeah, Scrap. He's just walking him down. He's cutting off the ring so beautifully, matching his opponent's footsteps. Yeah, Andre, the footstep of a wolf heading towards the prey. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. He's on the prowl. I'll put that up for sure. Scrapbook says Hardline, great video today and yesterday. Yeah, Hardline. Now that the pre-ratings era videos and your various videos are coming up, I'm very excited. I've been dying waiting for this. Now they're coming out. I see the notification. I get that little thrill because I'm gonna learn something every time. Hardline says, I always thought in this fight it looked like Langford is holding his hands low, looking confident, but doing that encourages the opponent to try their luck and pot shot, allowing Langford to try and time them. Yeah, exactly. And also, if your hands are low, it discourages people throwing to the body. And so it can maybe cause a less disciplined fighter to start headhunting, which, of course, someone like Langford can exploit. Time them coming in. Yeah, hardline. Yeah, Rodolfo, good man. Buying the, put that up on the screen. Yeah, get that book. It's a great read. It's a great read, and mine is destroyed. It's so frayed from reading this. Andre, I'm already looking for the book in the meantime. Yeah, if you Google it, it'll come up a couple places you can get it. I ordered it from a local bookstore in Cambridge, actually where Langford used to live. Not in the bookstore, of course, but there's a bookstore in Central Square, Cambridge. We try and support local, but you can get it different places online. Either way, some of that little money will make its way back to Mr. Moyle, but also just support like buying copies of these books. Hardline says, thank you, Scrap. I'm getting to work on Greb's top 5 years. Can't wait for that with yourself and Random. I tell you guys, I'm so hype to do this Greb top 5. And I don't know, I have a lot of admiration for Greb. And I did look at his top 4 or 5 years in the middle of his career. But I'm really going to have to study as far as trying to rank them or even narrow it down to 5. This is going to be a real challenge, but I'm up to attempt. And it's helpful that, you know, to everyone, basically, when we do this 3-way live chat ranking Greb's 5 toughest seasons, you know, pretty much defer to Hardline and Scrap. You know, I'll have my little reasoning, but it's probably going to be flimsy reasoning. So I'll be trying not to get in the way and talk over these great boxing enthusiasts that they are. Oh, Andre found the book. You see, that's what's up. I want my royalty check. Claim oil. 20 pounds, not bad. Yeah, Hardline, you said, man, that the book by Moyle, because it's interesting, it's not dry. So there's a lot of good stories, but it doesn't get too goofy at the same time. Mark, what's up, man? Great to see you in the chat. Thanks, Mark. We're just watching a little Langford talking, and I'm just kind of rambling into my earpiece. Dolfo says, BL loves it, then it must be good. Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great book. So you just got it. You just got the book. That's what's up, man. That's extremely cool. There's some great pictures in the book, great stories, and at the back of the book where it shows the schedule as Mola compiled it, it's when you see it page to page, it just keeps going on forever. Just visually, the way it looks when you're actually holding the book and looking at this page after page of fights the guy had in his life. It's incredible. Yeah, let's stick that right up there. History's greatest uncrowned champion. Yeah, what a little chat we got on. Man, I am so blessed, guys. You terrific group of people. Thanks for being here. If anyone wants to jump on, I'm open to it. Post a link at the bottom and then just leave when someone gets on. No problem. Oh, Ace Boxing, welcome, sir. Yeah, he does. Let me put that up. Yeah, he cuts the ring off. Like, I've never really seen someone, but of course, physically, he's very unique, and his confidence in himself at this point with someone like Lang. And he said after, you know, Lang's punch was a snowflake. Like, he's just tougher than the other guys, as well as more skilled and more experienced. So it's a tough. It would be like, say, like Canelo, right? Fighting guys with only a third as many fights as him. It's already going to be tough if you have the experience of a Canelo fighting at that level, fighting one of the top guys in the sport. But then if you also don't have the experience, you don't have any advantages at all. There's almost no avenue. And for Langford, even some of the guys bigger than him, if they weren't like legitimately great, if they were just really, really good, it's hard for them to find an avenue to win. Yeah, 86 boxing, I'm just doing a little, I think even on slow motion, it's all happening a little too fast for me to do any analysis. I'm not proficient enough in the only language I speak to do so. I'll play it at full speed. Here we go. Change that background a little bit. Where's my Zen orange? Let me bring that back. I like that was mango. There we go. I like that. I'll jump over here in the comments just in case they have anything to say. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's kind of tragic. There's only parts of 3 fights Langford available at the moment. I still have hopes that maybe one day they'll dig up that 20 rounds of Langford McVeigh that was filmed in Australia, or I can't remember if it was the Iron Hague fight or the Tiger Smith. It might have been the Tiger Smith fight, but one of the fights Langford had, one of the other fights in London was filmed. There was some sort of someone from the royal family or the periphery of the royal family in attendance. They didn't let him distribute it or whatever. They took it away. I'm not sure which. So much like certain other fights, there are ones that get filmed, but they don't all survive, or at least in the public eye. But it would be interesting to think about what would have happened if Lang did pull the upset and came out with a win here. I mean, he would have been in a position to fight Johnson. It would have been a perfect position to fight Johnson, right? His promoter, McIntosh, promoted Johnson's title fight, has money to put up, and has the connections to do a big fight. I mean, he's Australian. He's doing a big fight here in London. Lang would have been on top of the world, but Langford wasn't having it. What's interesting too, so when they're not allowed to like clinch, although it looks like a little bit on the blind side of the ref, Lang is tugging on Sam's arm, but they're not really supposed to clinch too much. They're more like pushing on each other. They're not like, it's interesting to see how when Lang tries to use his size, it backfires every time because Langford is stronger than him, even with the size difference. He's just so much stronger. Look at that, left to the body, left to the head. Langford's real smooth. His shot selection's very inspired, so lots of ways to get hurt trying to fight Langford, and it could be done. Like McVeigh, like Jim Flynn in their second fight, he was wrestling a lot. Whether or not, it's unclear whether or not Langford was carrying him a little bit, but Jim Flynn got the best of him, and they were saying with the grappling, he couldn't pull that here in London, in England, so they're having to fight a very clean fight. And it's interesting because people often think of this by default. They think of this era as people don't know how to. They're just brawling. The brawling era is gone. There's still brawlers and battlers, but this is a long time after there were already master boxers in the sport. 1911, there have been so many great fighters, legitimately great stylists already at this point in boxing history. So Langford was just another one of them, but he was combined with that knockout power. Like the great Archie Moore had stopping ability because he was throwing combination. He was great at catching people when you already had him stung to get that third or fourth shot in that would finish it. But Langford actually had like the ability for the one shot stoppage, the death punch. And so that made him extra tricky. Added to all the other things is that it wasn't that he was going to catch you with a 1-2-3, although he could throw in combination, but it was that if he got you right with that left hook or the right straight, it could be Goodnight Irene right there. And a lot of powerful fighters considered Langford the hardest puncher ever. Jim Flynn, Ed Gumbo Smith, Harry Wills, I'm not sure who else. A lot of guys. And the press, they were saying like Bob Fitzsimmons was notably such a hard hitter, and he was a lighter guy too in his day. And some of the different articles, they give Langford credit sort of taking over the mantle of the hardest puncher in the sport. So that could show you how mythically hard Bob Fitzsimmons must have been able to hit. He was a blacksmith. Langford to build up his physique, he did a lot of manual labor, and he started, I think he was 13 when he left home. So he's living a hard life for several years as he's growing up physically, strengthening himself. So he must have been teak tough. But Bob Fitzsimmons, blacksmith, I think Joe Jeanette, apprentice, is a blacksmith. Maybe Scrap could say that. Could let me know if I remember that correctly. But certain kinds of repeat motion stuff, especially like blacksmith or working on the railroad with the mallet or hammer, whatever they would call it, but spikes in the railroad, certain things would build the kind of muscle that would translate well to punching. So when you see guys chopping wood and things like that, certain things build the right kind of muscles. So Langford had done a lot of this before he was ever fighting. When he was still a teenager, he was doing really hard manual labor. And he's just battering Lang. And really, considering the establishment wasn't too hot on all these white guys getting beat up, or at least large parts of the establishment, be interesting to know what got taken out of the footage. Like, is this the stuff that was even remotely competitive, and what was taken out was Lang getting completely embarrassed, or is this the action and the rest was boring? I wonder about stuff like that. Let me go back and read some comments. You guys are having this great talk. Let me get in on this. Yes, Rodolfo, there's more films. There are 2 fights at least of Langford's that were filmed that I'm not aware of surviving in the public eye. They could be in private collections or archives, government archives or something. So there's 3 fights parts of 3 fights that we do have. And then there's at least 2 more that we don't have. So we can dream. Yeah, Conchonery, appropriately put, that is how cutting off the ring is done. If you can fight from a square stance. If you can't, we see like Joe Louis did more of a shuffle, right? So he would keep his lead leg in the lead. Whereas Langford's just, as Lang's doing all this work to circle around, Langford takes a couple steps and nothing has changed. He's still got him in the next corner. There's just, you have to be a certain level of good and tough to get away with that. Apple says, anyone know anything about the gloves here? They look bigger than the ones they were using in USA at the time. Could be a trick of old film. They look different. They actually were different, Haplo. So in Clay Moyle's book, he relates a story that I think it was according to Langford that so after the fight, they felt different, right? He didn't feel like his punches had the proper sting. So he hung on to them. He ripped it open. It was rabbit fur in there. So Hugh McIntosh, the promoter, according to Langford, had changed the stuffing out. He would have assumed, of course, that it was to rob some of the sting from his punches. And McIntosh said it was for the visual effect, They were like custom gloves. But yeah, it was probably just so that it'd make it harder for Langford to knock him out, little games and tricks in this time. It's not necessarily like people are above it. So apparently, yeah, with the gloves is so from what I'd read in the book, so Langford thought it was so show up against his skin, so be more visually enticing for the filming and whatnot. But when he found out it was rabbit fur, that he assumed it was to rob his punches of their sting. Didn't help Lang. Maybe it made the fight a little bit longer. Hardline says they were using Langford as a springboard to the top. They were going to try and get a Johnson fight. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It would have worked too, man. Johnson would have loved to fight someone who could beat Jeanette. McVeigh or Langford that wasn't one of the other three. That's all he needed. He just needed one of them to get past him. As it was, he just fought some of the other guys who would have been in the periphery of the contention, but not on their level necessarily. Conchonry, I wonder what the state of Langford's vision was at this point. At this point, he was all good. He got nerve damage in 1917 against Fred Fulton, but this is February 1911, so he's still got years of proper vision. This is when he's at his possibly his most dangerous because he's very fast and nimble as well as having the power. So he has the delivery system for that tremendous physique. See right there, you see Lang goes for it, and then he very quickly remembers why he shouldn't be going for it. And credit to Bill Lang for putting up a fight. It's not like he's running. He's still trying to fight. He's trying to figure out a way to shut down what Langford's doing, but Langford has all these different looks he can present. Scrapbook says amazing difference in size between Lang and Langford. Absolutely. Bruce says the ref is in tux and tails. Yeah, man, they were doing it up. Proper. Conchonry, scrapbook boxing. I was going to comment on the same thing. It looks like a weight class disparity there. Well, definitely Conchonry. So I can't remember what they said Langford. I think he's 160 something. You know, he could be fighting at maybe these days he'd be cutting to middleweight if they wouldn't let him, or fighting at light heavyweight just without a cut. Because I mean, he hit so hard. He could fight above his weight and just give up the size. He didn't necessarily need to be bigger or cut weight. And I think that he wasn't big into boiling, burning the weight off, sweating out the weight and stuff for fights. So I must have played into why he was doing it all at a lot of his work at heavyweight. Scrapbook says Lang grabs Langford's right arm and then clinch. Yeah, he does, and he's doing it on the blind side of the ref. He's doing it on purpose. He's not getting called for it. Now, I bet if Langford was doing that, they probably would have said something. Hardline says, Rodolfo, I've read an interview with Lang's manager. He stated Johnson won't fight him, so he will get the acclaim for beating him. Sadly, Langford had different ideas. Yeah, it could have worked if Lang had somehow pulled off an upset. Or even 2 years earlier, if Iron Haig, because he knocked Langford down in the fourth, hit him with a Rilke punch. If Iron Haig had pulled off the upset, basically at this time, if you can beat Langford, you're getting a title shot. Johnson doesn't want to fight Langford, but if someone scored an upset, like Jim Flynn did, Jim Flynn ended up fighting Johnson, if I'm not mistaken. Andre says, I will repeat myself, but damn, that left is impossible to block or predict. Yeah, he had George Byers. He gave him a lot of credit for helping him really get that left hook in proper, hone it in. And, at this point, Byers had been training him and coaching him for a long time. So years. So yeah, he's learned all those lessons and he can do it all. See right here? Lang's like, okay, I'll just swing. And he's like, holy crap. Nice little uppercut there. But then when he tries to come in, he just runs into Langford. You see now the science is largely gone. So he didn't always, yeah, look at that right and that left. So when the science goes out the window and it's time to bang it out, Langford remains the top dog, the killer. So there's Lang. He's probably thinking like, what do I got to do here? I can't box him with that smooth parry. He's like, I can't box him. I can't bang it out with him. So after the fight, Bill Lang said that he was game planning to take over in the second half of the fight. But as you watch the fight, Langford's not slowing down. Lang doesn't look like he's slowing down much, but apparently his blood was spraying everywhere and he was just getting mauled. It'd be wonderful if we had this whole fight. But I actually like it under the British rules here where they're breaking clean. It's not like it's the opposite of like a Bernard Hopkins fight where he's like, hey, let me leave my head and just pull on your arms and really just annoy everyone who wants to see some guys throw some hands. Not every fight, but you know what I mean with Hopkins. He was capable of that, slowing the fight down, making it kind of gritty. And but I actually like this rule set here for watching this, where because they're throwing a lot, I think a lot more hands. There's less inside work. Scrapbook says, yes, Bruce, that's the way the refs dressed in England back then. Sometimes they refed from the audience. Yeah, I'd read that somewhere, Scrap, where they're saying sometimes they wouldn't even be in the ring. No third man in the ring. They would be outside of it, which is interesting. Rodolfo says, I noticed there's two types of towel boys, the ones who just wave the towel aimlessly with no power, and the ones who power up their swing to get a big gust of air on the fighter. So they got like, they're playing roles, they got like shifts or teams, they got assignments. Bruce says at Scrapbook Boxing, I'm surprised they didn't pass out from heat exhaustion dressed like that. Right? Scrapbook, they did kangaroo leaps and shoved each other with one hand, usually a man bigger than them. Yeah, Scrap, and I will clip that footage. There's footage of Langford pushing off of a series of sparring partners and also them doing like the leapfrog stuff. I'll put that together. There's so little footage, but I treasure any access to all of this. Yeah, Mark from Unrivaled. Yeah, it is in England. Yeah, this is the upper class English stuff, you know. They were very proper in this time. It must have been interesting seeing, you know, if you beam me back in time, I would be watching the fight, but I'd also be watching those guys in the crowd, like the upper class English guys who are betting on it, who, you know, the enthusiasts. Conchonry says Archie Moore is pretty exceptional. The record about 200 fights. He still only lost about 20, 90% percentage on wins. Then you have 100 some odd KOs. Yeah, I think Moore is up like 100 and close, somewhere in the 130 range, give or take. Langford's pretty close to that himself. Bruce says, yeah, but those Cowboys make it look hot in that ring. Yeah, man. I can't dress up like that. I sweat just thinking about wearing a collared shirt. Scrapbook says sometimes 100-degree heat, Bruce. Yeah, these guys, not that happens notably in other fights too throughout history where temperature can really take a toll, you know. And certain fights, you know, sometimes these fights happen in some real adverse circumstances. Like, okay, so when Bill Lang fought Jack Johnson, I believe that was in Australia, his 11th fight, and he only had one pretty good win at that point. When he fought Jack Johnson, Lang did. When he fought Jack Johnson, that was in the rain. That was an outdoor ring in the rain. Hey y'all. Hey, hold on a second, everybody. I gotta relocate real quick. I'm gonna let that run. I'm gonna mute my mic. Give me 20 seconds. Okay, guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. I'm in the basement, so I'm not like forcing my wife to tiptoe around. But it's not, you know, we're not the only apartment. Okay, so let's see. Where were we on this chat? Here we go. Rodolfo says, yeah, BL later in Langford's career when he was becoming blind and past his prime, fighters add to their reputation by being known as beating him. But Langford wasn't even his prime. Yeah, exactly. Langford, it mentions that in Claymore's book later in his career when he was obviously past it, losing his eyesight. At least it was easier for him to get fights because he would have been a stepping stone. Some of the guys who were afraid of him, maybe it just went over the line to be worth the risk. Yeah, Con, heat stroke warning indeed. Apple says, well, wow, interesting. I knew something looked different about those gloves. Glad I'm not crazy. Yeah, that was a good call. When I first saw this myself, a couple years ago now, a few years ago now, but I was like, wow, those gloves look bigger. I wonder if they use, and it confused me at first. And it wasn't until I got this book on Langford. I'm not even sure when I got this book, maybe a year ago, a little less than a year. Then I read that part and I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, any of y'all, once again, I recommend Clay Moyle's book, Sam Langford, Boxing's Greatest Uncrowned Champion. Some really great stories and anecdotes in that book, in addition to just factual information that's referenced. And what I did is I read that book, then I got some newspaper archive subscriptions and started trying to look up the articles that it referenced, at least the ones that were in these archives. And that helped me a lot, and that's kind of what got me sucked into the archives. So Rodolfo says it was sort of achievement to say I beat the boogeyman, Sam Langford. Yeah, exactly. And there were some guys who could make that claim. There were also a lot of guys who got smacked around trying to be one of the guys who beat Langford. Yeah, scrapbook. I thought so. The men hand cranked the film projectors the whole fight. Yeah, so it's uneven. So when I was trying to match the timing, 75% was like the average, but sometimes it would have been better at 73 up to about 77% of the speed of the YouTube upload that I had gotten it from. So I settled on 75. I don't have the good enough video program to do some sort of variable rate adjustment. So certain things here will look a little slow. Sometimes it might look a little fast. That's because the guy's hand cranking it. And I got little string bean arms, so I can empathize if they can't always keep the same pace. Yeah, exactly, Scrapbook. We have film because of their efforts. That's right. There's, and in spite of the tragedy of not having everything available to us that was filmed at the time, we do have some things surviving. This fight was like, what, 111 years ago? So we're blessed to have anything. And I love watching these. I watch them a lot and just try to think about how that relates out to other opponents. And it's even worse with Harry Greb, no footage, but there is a lot of footage of Harry Greb's opponents. So, seeing footage of some of these brilliant boxers and then thinking of how like a wild man like Greb could overcome that with volume and with his controlled chaos, his movement and his timing, creativity. I like thinking about those things. Uh-oh. Someone's messing with BL. Okay, hardline boxing talk. Scrapbook, someone told me today Dempsey was too big for Langford. I was like, hold it. Oh my goodness. Yo, BL, you should do a live chat on that. I would love to hear you go off for about an hour on that topic. Dempsey too big for Langford. I mean, I would agree with some of the people I saw sharing their opinions later, around the time Langford retired in the mid-20s, who were quite convinced that Dempsey, the way he came in, that Dempsey would have just gotten schooled by Langford, that he just stylistically it was the wrong fit to try and be the Langford type. Haplo says, weird to me, no fight footage of Greb exists. I gotta believe there's some buried somewhere. Hopefully some old crusty old dude has, the son of crusty old dude has Greb fighting Mickey Walker, which was filmed. So that I've heard that called like the holy grail of lost footage. But for me, it's Langford 20 rounds against Sam McVeigh. If I could have one or the other, I'm taking the 20 rounds against Sam McVeigh. Just because of my personal curiosity, not because I think it's more important to the community. Like I said, I'm a little bit of an outsider. I'm not really, I'm in the community, but I don't come prepackaged with some of the themes that run through boxing the way people normally get into it. So for me, the holy grail has become that Langford McVeigh fight. So let's see. Oh yeah, good point, Rodolfo. Yeah, the guy, the hand crank camera guys deserve to be in the Boxing Hall of Fame. That's right, tech staff or whatever. Khan Sean, amazing. It seems men were built tougher in those days. Yeah, well, Khan, that was a tough life. Hard times, less comforts than today, and just a harder mentality. So yeah, it did translate to when the toughest of the tough in a tough era get in there. It's going to be serious. Scrapbook says, "Wow, nice combinations." Yeah, Scrap. He's not just throwing whatever or throwing single punches or doing this. I mean, he has a fully evolved, sophisticated system of feints and inside work and outside work and different ways to jab and combine and misdirection and obviously footwork. Look at that. It's funny because it looks so basic, like it's like careless, like he's just walking toward him while the guy's circling around getting ready to pounce. But of course, Langford's he's not putting any effort into looking intimidating. He's being intimidating. Walking toward him like, go ahead, punch at me. Very interesting. Dolfo said, I wouldn't doubt that Haplo unless they really didn't take film at all, which is a crime in itself. There was at least one fight that was definitely filmed. And actually, Hardline and Scrapbook probably will definitely can tell you better than I. But I do know that I've seen that Greb and Mickey Walker, when they fought, it was filmed. But what happened to it? Who knows? Long time ago, politics, or it's hard to say. Yeah, Con, those gloves were huge, and I guess they were fluffier than normal gloves, which I assume was so that Lang wouldn't get his ass clocked as quickly. Or in their minds, it would allow him to win on points, or at least not to take the full punishment, because Lang wasn't going to be knocking out Langford. So if they're both wearing the same gloves, so it doesn't stand out. That doesn't hurt Lang the way it hurts Langford, as far as because Langford was a knockout guy. Hardline says Haplo and Rodolfo, a number of Greb fights were filmed. Sadly, we don't have them. Yep, one can always dream, right? Hope springs eternal, BL. Haplo says, I thought the same, Con. He said they stuffed Langford's gloves with rabbit fur instead of horsehair. Yep. Con says, I agree. Hopkins was usually the boss in the ring. Yeah, and certain guys like Hopkins, Hagler, guys would learn to lead with their head. There are advantages there. A couple times in this fight, I see looks like Langford might have done a little of that when Lang's trying to pull him close. He ends up getting a little bit of a top of the head to the chin. Unrivaled says some of the footage you grabbed is said to have been waterlogged, damaged. Oh, that's so sad. But that's them's the breaks. We just do what we can. Antonio Mosley, what's up now? So we're not going to talk about Langford triple jab feint to the body. I know, right? I'm going to actually okay. So I'm going to take the best moments from this footage and do a little, not a highlight, do a series of individual slow motion clips so we can really look at his selection, because there's so many things he's doing in this. And as you might have noticed, oh, for a moment there, Bill Lang was circling to the right. He was circling away from the right hand. But of course, he has to worry about the left hook. So now he's circling away from that left hook. That's interesting to see him. Oh, there is the left hook and a right straight to the body. You see, you can't win. You really can't win against Langford. Whichever direction you're going, the best direction to go is to the direction away from climbing in the ring with him. Johnson, I guess, got that. Johnson had the right direction to not have a hard night against Langford. Or you do like the Joplin Ghost, do like Jeff Clark, and just keep it moving. Because Lang is doing the movement, but he's not a Jeff Clark in there. And he's stopping to try and bang it out, which is a big mistake. Hardline says, Rodolfo, unknown what happened to them all. We'll probably never know. Yeah, it's tough. That was one of the things when I started to get into the historical research, realizing how much was lost that was once documented. But at the same time, other aspects of history even less documented, the boxing, so In a way, we're blessed, but it's bittersweet, of course. Antonio says, "Hey, Rodolfo, how are you? Same to everyone else here." Yeah, Antonio, thanks for coming by, man. Nice little hangout we got here. Hardline box talk, Antonio. I was going to mention that earlier. Sam backed him in the corner with a jab and used multiple feints to try to slot him with something big. Unrivaled says, other stories say someone brought them up and keeps them to themselves. Some even go as far as say they got damaged in transit. The answer is we don't know. Yeah, maybe someday we'll find out. Haplo says they're probably in some underground film vault. There's lots of these in the USA. Someone probably doesn't even know they have it. You know, I wouldn't be surprised, man, because even it's not quite the same, but like I have newspaper archive subscriptions, and I see stuff in there that I don't see anywhere that isn't behind a paywall. Couple photos on BoxRec now. I got them. They were very graciously added photos to Danny Dwayne and to the Professor Andy Watson photos I'd sent them that I found, and they didn't have a picture up there for them. These weren't pictures that I'd seen anywhere online other than in the archive. So film archive sitting there in some of the thing, maybe somewhere in the Royal Vault, the Royal Archive in England's the Tiger Smith fight, the full Lang fight. It's hard to say, you know. One can dream. We just hope that someday they sort it out. Con Connery says Foreman versus Young in San Juan, 1977 was one of those where heat exhaustion played a part. Yeah. Robinson versus Maxim. That was the one I was thinking of, Con Connery. Yeah. They sweat something fierce in that fight. Oh, yeah. And Haplo echoing it too. Hardline says Haplo. Or they do know and they'll sell it for their retirement fund. Yeah, they could be holding out until the end. Oh, let's run that again. What should I do? Should I run the slow-mo? I'm gonna run the slow-mo. Round one. Come back to the comments here. The heat KO'd Sugar Ray. Yeah, Con. 108 degrees, Scrapbook says. 108 degrees. Yeah, Mark. I mean, some rich enthusiasts would crowdfund an enormous amount of money, a giant truck full of money to get footage on Greb. Conshine says Haplo. Yep. The same Cheerios. Let's see. Scrapbook says, all right, let's see. We a little back and forth, chatty chat. Let's see. Oh yeah, Conshari, I forgot you came. I was very nearly asleep while I was on that chat. I actually fell asleep to Mark's dulcet tones of his voice for a moment there, right before I got off, or a little while, I think, before I got off. But that was cool, man. And I think you said that was your first live. I haven't made many appearances on live chats. This is let me see. What Antonio says? Acoustic. You can customize the speed on YouTube if you're on a PC. Yeah, and I did that previously, but I'm actually on my phone right now, so I'm actually uploading clips to the browser. I'm not sharing YouTube. I've got the footage, and I've just rendered. Like here, I rendered this in half speed, or close to half speed. But I do use the playback speeds. Oftentimes, 75% speed fixes the old timey high speed Charlie Chaplin looking pacing of the footage. Conshiner says unrivaled boxer talk, the only guy I've heard in the wild recite Ali lines verbatim. Dolpha says expose and BL, love a good rant video to brighten up the day. Are you talking about someone saying Dempsey was too big for Langford? I want to hear. I second that emotion. Go on, BL. Give it to him. Mark saying I love Ali. Yeah, what a great combination of powerful fighter, supremely tough individual with a strong mind, and also an entertaining guy. What a combo. Yes, Conshana, yes, we pray for the discovery of the crusty old archives. You got that right. Haplo says, whoever said that about Langford being too small would have picked Willard to beat Dempsey had he been alive back then. Yeah. And you know, it seems like the people who talk about size, they ignore evidence to the contrary. Like Joshua just lost to Usyk. In the lead up to that, we're saying, "Oh, too big, too big." Some people are saying, but after we see these fights, that should now factor into how we view other fights. Lesson learned, right? Like, no, you're not necessarily too small if you're not a gigantic heavyweight. That's always been true. It's not like really big guys just started boxing. Like, there's some really big guys going all the way back. They just weren't always the best. Especially as like Wilder's not that heavy. I think he beefed up for that last one, but he's not that heavy in his fights. He's tall, but it's not like he's not as heavy as battling Jim Johnson. Battling Jim was like 230, 240, ripped 230, 240. You know, he's not as tall as Wilder, but you know, he takes poops way more than that guy. Not literally, you know what I mean. Being big is an advantage if everything else is equal, size, speed. I mean, if strength, speed, and everything else is equal, having more mass is an advantage, but that's not usually how the equation plays out. Conshawner says, unrivaled. Ali is my man. Yeah, Ali is so easy to admire. So many different things about him. Hardline gives us hope. He says, Rodolfo, if I get time, I may. I would love to hear you go off on that, BL, because Dempsey was a very powerful fighter, but as far as being too big for Sam Langford, he wasn't even big compared to the guys that Langford fought that we would think of as big. It's not like Dempsey was a gigantic heavyweight himself. We're really talking about two guys who are smaller than some of their opponents. I think it would be a tough one for Dempsey, but it's hard to say. I've heard BL say in the past that he thought maybe in a long fight toward the end, Dempsey would have been a real handful for Langford. And you could be right there. Um, but certainly just being big against Sam Langford on its own doesn't mean anything at all. It means less than nothing. Oh, great. You're one more guy who's really big compared to Langford. Join the club. Oh, let me hide this here. We're not getting a lot of spam, which is kind of cool. Glad to avoid too much spam. Haplo says he also rolls so smoothly with the punches and takes all the steam off. That and the foot placements stick out to me. Yeah, exactly, Haplo. It's really brilliant. Rival says the silver slipper was filmed. Yes. Hardline says I always laugh when people say, yes, Langford could fight Wills, but he wouldn't be able to fight Hagler. Yeah, I mean, even though Hagler's a different look, come on, man. Like, I'll put it this way. Hagler is a great fighter. He never fought anyone with approaching the power of Sam Langford. We never saw Hagler get hit with a Langford style punch. So we don't know how he would respond. People look at Langford like, what does Langford need to do? Well, Langford proved you could beat up far bigger men than Hagler. So really, it's more like, how would Hagler respond to a guy that if he stays in the pocket with him, he's going to get probably knocked out, even though he was so tough and so hard to hurt. But that's partly because he's not fighting at heavyweight. Take Marvin Hagler up and have all his opponents be 20, 30 pounds heavier than him during fight time, like naturally bigger men, not fatties, not muffin tops. You wouldn't see the same record on Hagler. I mean, anyone who consistently gives up size at the highest levels is going to pick up losses. So even though Langford has quite a few losses, even he had some losses even before he left his prime, but if you look at the other guys who are trying to do a Langford style schedule, yeah, they all had losses. Nobody stays up there hitting the Hall of Fame again and again and again and wins them all. Just doesn't work that way. Not at that kind of pace. It's a good video idea, Random. Which one to slow down the it already left my head. I'm too baked. Like do the clips and go through it. Antonio says the thing about Langford is he knows boxing is about hit and not get hit. Yeah, and I think he said that his manager said that to him early in his career. He got some different various advice because he was kind of plugged in when he was coming up. JF, welcome to the chat, brother. He says he can maintain distance while still catching shots and walking you down. 5'6" is still so dominant. Yeah, by now he's probably a little bit over 5'7", pretty much his adult height, but the point stands. Yeah, he could just walk in and look so casual about it, but his sense of distance was special. And that's probably what made Muhammad Ali special. Is the things he was doing without that great sense of distance, like with the Liston fight. Those jabs, he was just barely slipping. He would have just been eating them and getting knocked out if he didn't have that sense of timing and distance. So that's something that Ali had in common with Langford, is that uncanny ability to judge, what really comes down to centimeters or millimeters rather than inches. At the highest level, it's a game of millimeters, I guess. Rodolfo says 108 degrees. How much degrees was it for Johnson Willard? Yeah, I heard that was a hot one too, yeah. Unrivaled said, Langford's main skill is easily his ability to control his opponent's arms. He's a master at arm control. Yeah, he certainly didn't make it easy for Lang to stifle him. Oh, Langford tried a big right, but you see, Lang, I should say, went for it. He's going for it. He's putting in work, but Langford's just happy to stand there and trade. It's not easily winnable or even likely to be winnable, just trading with Langford. But yeah, Mark, definitely one of his main, if not his main skills. Yeah, he can manipulate people. And I guess I would imagine a lot of that comes from all that experience at the lower weights with guys who are just naturally faster. So the speed of Langford's brain, his fight IQ, was operating at a high speed of the lower weights, but he's fighting big guys. And he was tough enough to take the shots of the bigger guys. Khan says, I'll jump on more lives in the future now that I know my technology works. Yeah, one of these days I'd love to do a live where I have a bunch of you guys on the same live. Maybe in ones or twos at a time, but let everyone speak their piece a little bit, just talk about what they love about the old school boxing. JF says everyone used to have infighting skills. Henry Armstrong definitely took notes watching Sam Langford. Armstrong was beautiful, yeah. Pushing the guy off balance, like don't let somebody get set. And that was, someone like Langford, he was going to take someone out of their comfort zone. Even if he wasn't trying to do it by like pulling faces and stuff, he's just casual. Some of the time he's casually walking toward the guy. But he's lots of feints. But when you see there, Lang lands a stiff left. And Langford just laughs it off. He was too strong. You look at that. That's the one you're talking about, right? 4 or 5 low feints, and then it comes with a big overhand. Hardline says, random, can't get motivated to do it. The comment was too stupid. Well, I understand, sir. I might take a swipe at that. I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about how Jack Dempsey was absolutely not automatically too big. Here's a full speed again. Not automatically too big to fight, for Langford to fight. I mean, I don't know who would win it, but of all the boxers in history, I don't know if there's anyone that it will be less wise to say X was too big for this guy to fight. Maybe you guys can tell me, is there anyone who's ever fought above their weight at the elite level more than Langford? I mean, Armstrong was small for welter, right? So maybe he did a lot, but Langford was up at the weight class where he was a smaller guy fighting at a weight class where people have knockout power. So it's a little different. If you're in the lower weights, yeah, the size counts more per pound, but you aren't necessarily facing the same degree of stopping power. The human chin and brain can only take so much. So Langford's swimming with the big dogs. As a medium-sized fighter, just put generically, he's swimming in deep waters, deep enough that giving up 30 pounds to Lang, he was a 3-1 favorite by fight time. So I could tell you something, you know, if you're giving up 30 pounds of actual bone and muscle, not a belly, 30 pounds of actual body mass, you know, like the parts that count. And he's bullying the guy around. He was a favorite, and he's bullying him around. Lang's obviously well conditioned for this, but you can be well conditioned. You can be versatile, or you can have a game plan like Lang had. Yeah, he's trying to throw a nice couple right counters there, but doesn't, because he has a lick of sense. He does not want to sit there and trade with Langford. That's unfortunate because as the big guy, you'd want to be able to not respect their power and go in and just bully them. What's happening is when they get close, Lang can push Langford back a little bit, although sometimes that goes wrong. He digs to the body, but he's pretty much just being chased around the ring. Look at that! Look at that cutting! Look at that expert ring cutting. Langford takes like he only took like 8 or 9 steps to cut off 3 sides of the ring. So efficient. So JF says, weight wouldn't matter to these old guys. They understood shot angles and redirecting of shots. Just a more skillful group of fighters. Yeah, it's a good point, Jay. And I think also the schedule they fought at and the fact that they could jump weight in fights gave them better experience than today's fighters. More versatile experience. Scrapbook says, great point on Rival Box Talk. Langford was a master of distance and range control. Absolutely. Unrivaled says, when he knows he has to go to a clinch, he pushes that lead arm to his opponent's shoulder and steps in toe to his left, keeping their arm extended so they can't use it. Good point. Hardline says, nobody. I said that in regards to Dempsey versus Greb. I've always picked Sam to beat Dempsey and Marciano. Oh, was that to me? Was I getting myself confused? My fault, BL. Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think you're actually right. You were saying toward the end of the fight, it gets tough with Dempsey with his power in the late rounds. Yeah, right, you are. Yeah, I think when we talked, we even mentioned Sam beating Dempsey. I don't know what I'm thinking over here. I think a heavyweight who could give Sam Langford trouble would be someone like, I don't know if this is gonna sound silly to you hardcores, but I remember an interview with Emmanuel Stewart, and he was trying to talk about what made Lennox Lewis special. And he was saying it was partly because he could bully people or he could fight smooth. You know, he could. His issue was maybe the approach he would take in the given moment, but that he was able to make it like a scrappy fight and to bully and just power through somebody. And maybe with his combination of size, technique, and also that versatility as far as the approaches, maybe he could have done something. He's certainly a big, tough guy. I think there are guys who could give Langford trouble, who could maybe have the attributes. But that doesn't mean that they have a resume that Langford had, or that they would necessarily, if they fought a series, they would maintain that success. Because once Langford's got a feel for somebody when he's at his best, you know, he oftentimes improved on his results over time. See, Scrapbook says Dempsey wouldn't walk in on Langford like he did Willard 1919. Yeah, I'd be wondering how Dempsey would fight Langford. I feel like he's just built to eat that left hook and those right straights. It's hard to say. Antonio says, Hardline, did you see the link? Not sure what that is. Conshonery says, Hagler had visible muscular in his head. Some people are tough and some are made of rocks. Yeah, he did, man. He had that like muscle plates. Hagler was something special. Although I do think, you know, for me to put Hagler on a plane with Langford, Hagler would have needed to go give up 20 to 40 pounds or sometimes 50 or more pounds and prove that those skills translate up against those significant physical disadvantages. But fighting same size guys or approximately same size guys, Hagler is such a brilliant and destructive fighter. Destruct and destroy. Hardline says, Scrapbook, totally agreed. If he did, he could be in big trouble. Yeah, just trying to walk in on Langford. I mean, he loved that. And I think think it was Harry Wills. I saw an article where Wills was saying that was part of the basis for Dempsey of being custom built for Langford because of the way he came in, and that was the perfect thing Langford needed someone to do to put themselves in a bad spot. JF says the Langford versus Hagler debate. Look at Duran. First to take Hagler 15 rounds. That's a natural lightweight doing that. Sam Langford has caused problems for Hagler. I'd say decision Langford. Yeah, could be. Although Hagler was fast and could fight, he could switch stance, he could step with somebody. So maybe that would turn into a battle of the ages. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't favor anyone Langford's size over Langford that I could, off the top of my head. Not when Langford was quick. When he had his full speed, his speed to power ratio was scary. A lot of people mentioned that at the time. He was so nimble and fast, but then he packed that punch. Hardline says Antonio, nobody didn't see it, didn't see Link. Conshawner says Scrapbook agreed. Langford wouldn't allow Dempsey to front foot him. I think I'm gonna do the slow motion again. Just switching between these, just so there's something on the screen while we have this chat. Scrapbook says true hardline. Antonio says hardline. Oh man, I wanted to show you a book about Wills and how Wills was looked at back when he was fighting. Oh, Antonio, is that essay you linked me to? I'd started to read it. It was really good. Talking about the perception of Harry Wills and how they were working to change the perception of colored fighters. Dolfo says, oh yeah, I almost forgot to tell you, BL, a channel called Rainy Day Boxing made a 15-minute video today on Langford's career. It's nice to see more people talking about him, and it was nicely made. Well, that's very cool. Hardline says, could you post a link under, I'll put that on the screen. Could you post a link under one of my vids, please? I'd love to see it. Yeah, good stuff, Rodolfo. Thanks for letting me know that earlier. I look forward to that myself. I'm doing a live on the best of Bellator and Ryzen MMA leagues at 8 p.m. my time, an hour and a quarter. And hopefully I'll have time to watch that video, Rodolfo, in between. If not, I'll be watching it afterwards. Antonio says, hardline boxing. I think I'll try to look. The book is mostly about how public considered him a great boxer and person to be. Hardline says, Rodolfo, that's good to see. When I came on YouTube in 2014, virtually no one mentioned him. Put the work in to spread the word. It's nice to see others talking about him. Yeah, Hardline. Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, is listening after the fact, Hardline Boxing Talk, the boxing librarian, it was his videos that got me inspired enough to then get sucked into studying Langford and early era boxing. So special thanks to the boxing librarian for inspiring people, including myself. Unrivaled. Yeah, Mark, Langford is the ultimate size exception. And from what I've heard tell, there are other notable guys who could go up, but I remember BL made an excellent comment when he's trying to identify what made Langford separate from even the all-time greats. Part of that was he kept his power when he moved up. He didn't pack on pounds to move up. He just fought bigger guys, and he kept his stopping power above his weight. There are other guys who've done it, but perhaps not at the sustained level that Langford was able to do it. Like, it's not just Langford's attributes, it's the degree to which he exhibited them and the frequency with which he did, not just that he could do it once. Conshawner says Ali in his prime fought like he had a radar built inside of him. He really did. He had some GPS on the opponent's fists. And he had the chin for when it didn't go right. You know, a guy can look pretty until he doesn't. But Ali had a chin that would, so that variation, you know, those low probability times when he did get hit, he could take it. That was another key component to Ali's greatness and longevity. Rodolfo says, no problem, BL. You introduced him to me, so I owe you. Yeah, you see, Hardline, you're out here inspiring people. Conchonry, there's a famous sequence in the Ernie Terrell fight where Terrell comes forward and throws a three-punch combination with Ali right in front of him, and Ali evades every punch using micro movements. Yeah, it'd be nice to do a little video talk on some Ali footage. Maybe I'll look at that at some point. JF says, I remember reading Langford liked fighting up in weight. It was just easier for him to see and react to everything. Yeah, that's right, Jay. And he learned the lesson from Danny Dwayne, where everything was just a whirlwind. You just couldn't keep up. Although he traded one problem for another, because guys being faster is a difficulty. But fighting McVeigh instead of a guy who's fast, that's those heavyweights he was fighting. A lot of those guys had serious stopping power. So he traded one issue for another and thrived anyway. Hardline says, Rodolfo, you don't owe me, buddy. If I've raised awareness of some fighters, then I've done my job. Well, you have definitely done your job, sir. Absolutely. Conchonry says, the finest defensive movements where Ali likely felt the air of the punches whipping past him as they missed. Yeah. Scrapbook says, Langford averaged 167 to 174 pounds against heavyweights. Yeah, and there's sort of the myth that all the heavyweights are small. Like Lang here, he's 203 pounds ripped with a six-pack, but McVeigh fought as high as 220 ripped. Will's 220 or possibly more ripped. Battling Jim, 230, 240 ripped. So it's, so people say, well, oh, Tyson Fury, look how big he is. Well, yeah, he's an especially big guy even for today. But also, if he was a chiseled six-pack instead of a bit of a muffin top, he wouldn't be as heavy as he is. He's got, because when you're carrying weight from having been overweight before, he's got like fat back and stuff. He's not like a slim, trim guy. And Tyson Fury is very clever and smooth boxer by today's standards. But, some of that is he's got some of that old school cleverness in his movement. But most of the heavyweights today aren't big like Tyson Fury. He's an outlier. People say Deontay Wilder because he's tall, but Deontay Wilder's wasn't he fighting around 220 something? It's not that big historically. It's not that heavy. It's not light, but it's not that heavy. Lots of guys have been 220 or more. Anyway, Antonio Mosley says, Harry Wills and the image of the black boxers from Jack Johnson to Joe Louis, the title of the book online. Go to images and you'll see an image of the title and click on it. Yeah, that was the one you linked me, Antonio. That's a great read. Hardline says, Random, have to go, buddy. Need to get good sleep. Shout out Random, Scrapbook, Haplo, Ross, Claude, Rodolfo, Antonio, Andre. Thanks for coming by, BL. It means a lot, my friend. Rodolfo says, I just posted the link. Put this up on. Now, BL, you learned it. Your channel's a gem. Has influenced others to be more interested in the sport. Peace. Scrapbook says, take care, Hardline. Yeah, Hardline, you are especially epic and inspiring to a lot of people. A lot of people really appreciate what you do. Same for you, Scrapbook. And Haplo, I'm going to go start checking out those bare knuckle era videos you had. So thank you in advance for all the entertainment I'll get out of it. Yeah, Hardline says, Scrapbook, get working on the grab years, buddy. Can't wait for that hookup with yourself, Random. We are going to have a two-person conversation with me watching from the sidelines. Now, I'll do what I can. I'll try to hold my own, but it's important to me that I don't overstep. Like, I don't front. I don't want to be one of the guys who pretends to know more than they know. There's a lot I don't know. And I'm cool with that. I'm actually more concerned with not seeming like I'm trying to be a know-it-all, because I do not know nearly as much as most or all of you guys. Just trying to get this stuff down bit by bit. JF, I love your outlook on boxing. For what it's worth, what's your top 5 pound for pound? I'll tell you mine after you mention yours. I'm not sure who you're addressing the question to, because I bet everyone in this chat's got a top 5 pound for pound, or at least some sense of it. Hey, random, can I promote something to you and the guys in the chat? Yeah, Mark, why don't you come on? You want to come on? You want me to post the link? I mean, you can absolutely promote something with in the chat comments, Mark. But if you want to come on the chat itself and do it with your voice, 100%. Conshonry says Wilder fought a number of fights under 220 as well. Conshonry, physical attributes alone, Wilder is like a huge Tommy Hearns. Oh, Jay, you said you were talking about me. My top 5 pound for pound. So it's not set in stone, but I'm fairly confident on the top 4. So I have Sam Langford number 1. I have Harry Greb number 2. I have Sugar Ray Robinson number 3, and I have Hammering Hank Armstrong number 4. And then number 5, it starts to get pretty tricky. Although my instinct usually leans towards Tony Canzoneri or maybe like a Maxie Rosenblum or a couple other guys. Archie Moore, I have him inside 10. I'm just not sure where some of these guys end up exactly. I don't have a set criteria, and I don't have like a giant database like BL's. But as far as my top 4, I'm comfortable saying Langford, Greb, Robinson, Armstrong in that order. But if someone had a different order, I wouldn't argue with. I wouldn't. It's not like trying to. It's not like trying to say someone with a tiny resume is the all-time great. Robinson and Armstrong have insane resumes. So if someone wants to argue that they're the top 2 and the other guys somewhere in there, that's cool too. It's just important to celebrate the greats. Conshonry says, absolutely none of us know it all. That's why I love the sharing of information, different points of view. Absolutely, Conshonry. Like, if we can be respectful and remember that it's not really about us. Our discussion is important, but the real point is what these fighters are doing and the martial arts that's going on. But it is very, there's always an element of excitement when people are fighting. It's just better than other sports, if you ask me. I'm not going to put any other sports down, but the only balls I want to see are in cups, in athletic protectors. That sounded bad. No, but I don't watch ball sports anymore, although I used to be quite a fanatic for certain ones. See, JF says Sugar Ray, Henry Armstrong, Sam Langford, Ezra Charles Ali. If with Harry Greb, then Greb is 2. All such great fighters. Conshonry says having to name a top 5 is brutal. It is brutal. It's killing me, but I got my 4. I'm fairly comfortable with my top 4. JF says, interesting. I like your 4, same as mine, just different order. Ezra Chakes 5. Yeah, Ezra Charles at number 5. I have trouble with Ezra Charles and Archie Moore. I have them ranked similarly in my head, in my tiny brain, but it's hard with the order. Once I get outside 4, I'm pretty lost. JF asks, you guys all fight before, just really into the sport? Well, personally, Jay, I used to train a little kickboxing, nothing heavy. And I had one kickboxing match I lost, but I took it on like I was like drunk one night, and I took it on short notice just to something to do, bucket list stuff. But no, I don't fight. I'm just an enthusiast. I love to train though. I love to hit the bag and shadow box. I don't spar anymore, but I used to do some of that too. But really, my interest in this would be like an interest in military history or something. I mean, this is sport, but it's also martial arts. So like, I'm looking at this as part of the lineage of martial arts. Personally, although when I watch fights now, like the Bellator show, the mixed martial arts show this weekend, I'm 100% fan. I go analyst in between the fights to pass the time, but I'm 100% fan. I'm just like very rabid fan of the Bellator league within the MMA sphere. But this is very satisfying, especially like trying to analyze this limited footage to just get what I can out of it. I mean, I'd rather it wasn't limited, but the fact that it is limited doesn't ruin my ability to enjoy it on multiple levels, especially looking at someone like Langford. Well, fellas, I didn't realize I've been going for 2.25 hours now. My throat was getting dry, and I'm like, what's going on here? And I've got my espresso sitting here untouched. It's been really great having you guys. This is a lot of fun. Why Bellator, not UFC? There's a few reasons, but without getting into a long list of complaints, I don't like title structure. The UFC is pay-per-view company, and their title structure is all politics. So they're not actually trying to figure out who the best fighter in each weight class is. They're pushing and protecting and just making sure they keep guys in contract and who's cheaper for them. And all that stuff is kind of a drag to me. So I follow Bellator, and there's no pay-per-view, so they just give the worthy guy the shot regardless of fame, and that's what I'm into. Scrapbook, thanks so much for being here. It means a lot, and thank you for listening and interacting. It's an honor having you associate with anything I'm doing. I'm really hyped for that grab thing. I'm going to be studying hard, so I'm not embarrassing myself for my lack of knowledge. So you guys go deep on grab, seriously deep. But yeah, have a great night, Scrapbook. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll get to interact with you soon. Conshonery says there is an intangible kind of honesty to this sport. Once you devote your attention to it, it can quickly become an obsession. You got that right, man. You got that right. I don't always dream about boxing, but when I do a particularly long stint in the archives, I do dream about boxing. That happened with other things I studied. I was studying Texas Hold'em for a while, and I was dreaming about cards and dreaming about plays that you can pull. That was pretty weird. I'm not a gambler. I just was studying the game as an intellectual exercise. I'm not really into gambling money. I'm too stupid to try and gamble money. I would lose it all. Dolphin says, I don't watch either. I just wanted to know. Yeah, well, the UFC is a lot more popular, but I'm not really a bandwagon type. The music I listen to or this and that. It's not, none of it's based on popularity. And I like the way that it's not the only thing I like, but I do like the title structure in Bellator. It doesn't feel, I don't have to feel like people are always getting screwed for their opportunity, out of their opportunity. And also my favorite fighter of all time, Fedor Emelianenko, he fights in Bellator, as do all of his students. So if the other reasons, many of which I'm just not going to get into here, but if I needed more reasons, the fact that all of Fedor team is in Bellator seals the deal. Oh, Rodolfo, you're very kind. Another banger of video, random. You're killing it. Thanks, man. Well, I appreciate it. It's fun having you guys here. I can't believe I'm sitting here babbling for over 2 hours. But this is a lot of fun. I can talk about fights. I can ramble on. And I'll be happy to host some of you guys. Come on the channel. You know the rules. You've been on BL's channel. Similar moderation, right? No drama, especially like racial drama or even like sexism. Like, I don't want to be tacky. I think of this like not quite a library environment, but like if you put a wet bar in a library, so you could be tipsy and have fun, but you're not supposed to be like out of line. Maybe that's what we've got here. So I'm baked. I'm very baked, but I'm not. I'm not someone who deals well with the disrespect, because always in my mind when I'm watching these fights is what these guys go through. And someone like Langford died with no money, so what he does get after the fact is respect for what he did in fighting, in martial arts and in sports, because he didn't get the money. Whereas other fighters like Mayweather got the money, right? And but he wants to be known as, he wants the greatness, but he said himself, you can't spend legacy. I'm like, that's cool, man. You got the money, but Langford. You're not taking on Langford challenges. You're not fighting like light heavyweights when you're a normal size welter or something, or fighting heavyweight, elite level heavyweight. So it's like you get the money, but the business credit is separate from the fighting credit. And to me, Langford's the most remarkable fighter in history. Even if I ignored the fact that from mid 1917 to 26, he was blind in one eye and still fighting and winning seasons for several seasons after that, until I think 1925 he broke even in 26. But until then, from 17 till then, he was having winning seasons with one eye. But even ignoring that, he's just remarkable in so many ways. It's just a pleasure studying him. And it's really sealed the deal for me when I found out that, he was based in Boston, where I live. So I can, there's research opportunities, and also just having an emotional connection to the city I loved, and knowing that he represented Boston and also Canada. But like, it wasn't always known or even reported in the paper that he was from Boston. I mean, that he was from Nova Scotia. I saw it reported he was from Boston, also that he was from Maine for some reason, as much as from Canada. So, the Boston Bonecrusher, the Boston Terror. So I think people are signing off. But let me read the last of these comments here. Dolfo, yeah, we ain't bandwagons over here. People always call me an old head for my taste in music, but I laugh even harder at them for their taste. Hey, Rodolfo, you're doing it up, man. I 100% support you in your taste in music and your and martial arts. Bruce says peace to everybody. Yeah, peace, Bruce. Conshanry, Dolfo, Andre, Unrivaled. Thanks to everyone who came by. I think I'm going to call it. I still owe you guys a guitar session because I love guitar. I'd love to come on and talk guitar. Maybe I'll do a tutorial, because I spent more hours playing lead guitar than maybe any single thing in my life that's a voluntary activity. I spent like the first 10 years of guitar, like obsessing about it, like 8 or 10 hours a day. And I didn't stop after 10 years, but that was before I was gigging, just like playing to where I would dream about it. That's when I know I'm getting deep enough into a subject and I'm dreaming about it. My subconscious works on it when I go to sleep. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to call it. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's an honor for me to have you guys come in the chat, because you guys are all cool as hell. So I'll do another one soon. Oh, Bruce, yeah, when I do the guitar show, you got to come on, man. I'll be singing in unison like Benson. I'm playing the West Montgomery octaves. We can get into some guitar and some music, man. Yeah, Rodolfo, you called that. As always, the next time for the guitar session. I will do a guitar session. Maybe I'll do one tomorrow or the day after. I've got less than an hour before I'm doing it live on Bellator with Jay Wolf. Jay Wolf is like a legend in mixed martial arts fandom. He's like a real super fan who puts a lot of the media to shame and how much he watches and his understanding of the history of everything. So yeah, me and Jay Wolf are going to do our awards show for Bellator and Ryzen. Ryzen is a ring-based mixed rules league based in Japan. And yep, Andre, thanks. If I forgot to shout out anyone by name, thank you for showing up. I appreciate every single one of you. JF, I realized I hadn't, just everybody. Thanks for coming by. We'll do this again. This is twice now I've promised to have guitar in hand and fell through, so we'll get that sorted. And I imagine I'll see some of you guys on your chats or on panels I'm going to try to be a little bit more social in between my studies and work and all my life happenings. So take care. I need a little catchphrase I sign off with. I don't have one yet, but thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk soon. Peace.